thank you, Gerard, for joining today. Joined by Gerard Longo, who's the founder and CEO of Underground Music Collective, which is a fantastic organization. At the Indie Distributor, obviously ties in with the ethos of wanting to encourage independent music and independent artist development. And so there's just so much synergy there. It's fantastic. But we wanted to just sit down and ask a couple of questions, kind of get from your perspective, a bit of your experience, but then also get you to kind of talk about kind of the background. I mean, why did you get started with this initiative and what kind of set things in motion?
Ooh, well, it's a long story. And it goes all the way back to 2013 when it was just me, an idea, a USB mic and a laptop in my childhood bedroom. Before I even had the USB mic, though, I had old editions of my college radio show that I was listening to one night. I had a weekend free, which was a rarity at that point. I was living in New Jersey, commuting to New York during the week, most weekends going down to the Philly area to hang out with my girlfriend at the time. And so I just had a weekend off and I needed an outlet, right? And I dug into these old episodes and I'm like, I'm going to start a podcast. I've heard of this podcast thing. I'm going to bring the show back. And I had no idea what I was doing. And that's in the book, 60 plus lessons from the creative journey, which is available now, if you head over to the socials. But I just started, and I just created the social media handles. I created the logo. I got on Twitter, as it was known at the time, and just started reaching out to artists saying, hey, can we feature your music on this podcast with 0 episodes that nobody's ever heard before? And a surprising number of them said yes. So we just followed the trail from there. Along the way, a lot of my friends from community theater joined the Quinn Spin, the podcast, as co-hosts, and we had a great almost 2-year run doing that. We had a chance to interview guests from 5 different continents. We had a chance to put on events. We had a chance to travel into New York and other cities to do interviews, put on shows, be a part of things, in those scenes. And it really, at the time, gave me an appreciation for what the independent artist, what the independent creative goes through. When I started the show, I was working as a contractor in the IBM Design Lab, which was one of the marketing communications labs where they develop a lot of their products and solutions on the marketing end at IBM. And so I was doing internal communications there. I was on a contract. My contract expired at the end of 2013. So a few months after I started the show. And at that point, I really leaned in. That was my first foray at, I'm going to see where this thing goes. Mm-hmm. I'm still working a bunch of odd jobs, delivering pizzas and mowing lawns and what have you at the time, but like really trying to lean in and figure out what it takes to build a creative platform. Mm-hmm. And it takes a lot more than you ever think it will. They say, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Well, do what you love and you're going to find out you need to work harder than you've ever had to work before. You're going to find out what's in you real quick, and you're going to find out whether this is something you want to do. Mm-hmm. And so I did, and through 2014, about half of 2015, the Quinn Spin kept chugging along. Meanwhile, me and my co-host, our lives kind of started going in different directions. I made the executive decision, which I talk about in the book, was probably not handled the right way, to take the show in a solo direction. I had moved out to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania at the time, where I went to college. I had just gotten another job out there. And I took the show with me, essentially. And a few months later, I launched Lehigh Valley Underground, which was the first iteration of Underground Music Collective, because I felt that the podcast needed more around it. And my solution to that was to start a blog. There's a music scene where I just moved to. So, I'm writing about local releases. I'm going to local shows. I'm teaching myself photography, that kind of thing. And I'm really this is the first time I'm actively in a scene every single day. This is the start of 2016 at this point. And through 2016, 2017, 2018, LVU, Lehigh Valley Underground, is becoming this force in the community. We start working with a lot of local organizations, prominent ones. Pretty quickly, artists are becoming aware of us. By the end of our run there locally, regionally, we won a few local awards. But by mid-2018, started to kind of feel the winds of change blowing personally and professionally. I knew at that point I'm 31 and I'm I want to see what I've got here. I want to see if I could take this to an industry town, learn what I don't know yet. I kind of felt like I needed that knowledge to take this platform to the next level, right? Of going somewhere like a New York or a Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was between those two cities. Nashville, although geographically further away, won because I had friends who lived here already. They were able to set me up. They actually needed a roommate at the time. Like, I ended up finding opportunity after opportunity here. And so made the decision at the end of November 2018 to pick up, go to Nashville. We rebranded at that point to Underground Music Collective. Still have the blog, still have the podcast at that point, and we still do today. But over the course of time, you know, and of course being here and getting the industry education that you can only get in a place like Nashville, right? You start to want to give that back, and you start to want to share the lessons you've learned, right? And so over the years, and especially since taking my own permanent leap from corporate America at the start of 2021, that was the last time I had a desk job, I've learned what it takes to be an entrepreneur. I've learned that taking that leap will teach you everything you need to know about yourself, both personally and professionally. And although I haven't been actively making music, although I will drop the mixtape one day, I find so many similarities between the platform I've built and what independent artists go through, right? Because we're all building something from zero, right? And we're all building something that just starts with an idea. And we have to follow the trail on opportunities. We have to build relationships. We have to figure out how to show up for those relationships, as well as for ourselves, as well as for our endeavors, right? And so the platform has taken more of an educational turn over the past few years. We officially launched our UMC Academy program on my birthday in 2023, March 10th. So that's coming up on 2 years. And what I really specialize in is helping artists develop their big picture concepts on the education end. So who are you? Why do you do what you do? What are your values? And let's create from a place of those values. Let's define your mission and vision from those values. Let's figure out your value proposition, which is, what do you as an artist, as a creative entity, bring to the table that your audience segments can't quite get anywhere else? And your audience segments, it's not just your fans, it's your collaborators, right? It's anybody you might work with, partners, you know, anybody you're asking to make a business decision. Each of those segments is going to value different things. Yeah, and they're going to look to you to see whether or not you can provide that value in exchange for the value they're giving you, right? So helping to focus artists on that, helping them to set goals that they can then go take action upon, that's really where the focus is. And it's led to some really exciting opportunities I'm sure we're going to get into. But basically the long-term vision, you know, is going forward as well, is to have Underground Music Collective be a resource for everything the independent artist needs, whether it is that music review on the blog, whether it is that interview on the podcast, whether it's the opportunity to have a one-on-one mentor like myself or other folks that we'll bring on, right? We're building a community right now. We're in the process of building the 1.0 version of our new membership community, where we're going to have a lot of on-demand learning from other experts in different creative disciplines throughout the industry and adjacent industries. And the idea is to be able to connect these dots across disciplines, across industries, even across markets. Had a great year in 2024 last year, where I got to come up there to Gustapalooza. Got to go to New Orleans for NOLA Music Con. I'll be at South by Southwest in March. You know, so starting to build these pipelines and starting to see all these dots connecting and all these people having similar conversations in different locations is really inspiring too. Because we're all talking about, in one way or another, how do we give creators the power? And we empower them by teaching them to be entrepreneurs, by helping them think and move that way, by helping them identify the pieces that they need to complete the puzzle so they can lean into what they're good at, and they can build the team around them, build the ecosystem around them to succeed. So that's really all from an idea for a podcast, because I needed a creative outlet so I could stop having panic attacks in the summer of 2013.
Yep. That I mean, you know, I think a lot of people can attest to that, needing to follow the kind of the voice or the feeling that you have that you need to contribute towards something that's going to be ultimately fulfilling. And that's an inspiring story, definitely. Interesting what you touch on there as far as the importance of the musician or artist understanding entrepreneurial, associating entrepreneurship with their craft. And have you received pushback by some of your clientele in the sense of, well, that's not really what art is? You know, I want to stay true to my art. I don't necessarily want to get involved in the business side. Or has it been an easier conversation?
For the most part, I think it's been an easier conversation because I think the person that actually comes in as a client is ready to come in as a client.
Right.
There have been exceptions to that, right? Where I think, before I really refined who my ideal client is, which is the artistpreneur, right? And that I'm now able to identify pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I pick up clients, even for other projects, and like their focus, was more on, well, how do I go viral? How do I do what this person's doing? And it's like, that's not the point. The point is to lean into what you do and what you do better than anybody. And how can we develop systems? How can we develop structures? How can we develop a team and goals and an overall mission so you can go forth and do that thing? And I think a lot of artists, a lot of people in general in this industry, I think when they first start out, and I can tell you I was guilty of this too, think it's going to be easy. Think it's like, oh, well, this is an overnight success, so I'm going to be an overnight success. Somebody just needs to discover me and see how talented I am. We definitely, it's funny now, when we started the Quinn Spin, we definitely thought, 6 months from now we'll be on Sirius XM.
Right.
We're still not on Sirius XM, and we're about 12 years into this thing. One day we will. We have had some cool full circle moments, but that, like, the path has definitely taken a different shape, and there's beauty in that journey. And I think the client that comes in, the person that we work with, like, they embrace that it's a journey. They embrace that it's a process. They realize that overnight success is a myth. It doesn't exist. Like, even somebody who appears to have blown up overnight. Like, when I first moved to town, 2018, 2019, like, Lizzo was the new big thing in pop music, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, like, hearing people say, oh yeah, she just popped up overnight. Well, you come to find out, like, it took her years. Like, she was sleeping in her car. She was eating fast food, negative bank balance, the whole thing, trying to make it work for years. And yeah, okay, she has a big hit or two with Truth Hurts, with Good as Hell, and all of a sudden everybody knows who Lizzo is. Overnight success. That doesn't exist. It's that quote of, overnight success, is, 10 years in the making. Or, I butchered that, but you have to learn to love the process of it. And so I think previously, where maybe there would have been some pushback, or like some folks who came into the ecosystem who didn't get it, I think it's because my own ecosystem wasn't as refined as it is now. Okay. But now, like, we make no bones about it, this is for the artistpreneur, so it kind of filters out the person that thinks it's going to be easy straight off the rip, because, like, we're going to dig deep. Like, we just did our first, we're wrapping up our first brand camp, which is a 6-week program where we really dig into the VMV, as I call it, the values, the mission, the vision, and use that as our jumping off point to do some goal setting. And people keep telling me that, they've been meaning to do this kind of work with somebody. Mm-hmm. But that means they were ready for it. That means they were already thinking about, I need to dig deeper and figure out exactly what I want to do. And I need somebody to help pull that out of me. And that's what it's designed to do, right? Well, it's designed to spark ideas. It's designed to help organize thoughts. It's designed to take what's already there inside of you and bring it out and show it to you and be like, here's what you got. Mm-hmm. Now, here's an idea of what you could do with it. Take it or leave it. Most of the time they take it, because chances are they were thinking along similar lines, right? But that's the beautiful thing, is like, I always say, and I stole this line from the Angry Therapist, John Kim, who's a relationship coach and podcaster. He does therapy with you instead of at you. Now, I'm not a therapist, let's make that clear, but I coach, I mentor with you instead of at you. I'm not standing here preaching from the pulpit saying, you need to do this, and I've got the secret to your 7-figure life. I'm not that guy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you questions to get you to reveal the answers to yourself. And then we're going to develop solutions together that you can take going forward. And so that's the exciting part, because, like, all I've got to do is listen and ask the right questions, right? And the artist gets to discover for themselves what's been there the entire time, and then they have a clear idea of what they're going to take action on. So it's the artist, it's the creative. It's not just limited to musicians. Any creative entrepreneur would benefit from Brand Camp, the UMC Academy. Like, it's the creative who is ready to see what's inside of them, right? And who understands that this is a process and it's something to be enjoyed, and that's truly where the joy is. The moments, whether highs or lows, are fleeting, right? But it's the adventure that we have, and it's the little things that happen along that adventure that really give this story color.
Yeah. Yeah, and you touched on there understanding in sort of industry parlance for marketing perspective, the ICP, or the ideal customer profile. And from a entrepreneurial perspective, it's important for the artist to understand that person, right, for them. Because I think sometimes there's a bit of a pitfall when we start to think about metrics only, right? We think about broad numbers. We are fixated on weekly listeners on Spotify because we've come to understand that, if you're under 50K, then you won't be considered a real artist, which is, I don't think that's even remotely true. And I also think that it's a dangerous sentiment for any artist that's trying to make something of their statement, because heck, can you imagine even just having even as Shoemaker Levy, my band, having a room full of 100 assigned listeners is magnificent. I mean, I don't need to have 50,000 followers on Instagram or Spotify to clarify that I'm my niche, the people that identify with the music that we're doing, that is really the important thing to us. And sometimes I don't know, you may have similar experiences where it's the artist would come in fixated on a quick solution to getting to those metrics.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why, if that's the case and that's your fixation, like, the UMC Academy isn't the platform to help you. I'm not going to help you in that case, because I'm not focused on that. I'm focused on the reason we start with values is because by identifying and giving life to your values, you identify the values of your audience, and you're going to create more authentic connections. And those connections, those people are going to connect with something in you that transcends a particular sound, a particular trend. They're the ones that are going to stick with you. They're going to be your 1,000 true fans, if you're familiar with that. And like, these are the fundamental principles. You want to come at it from a place of your own authenticity. And to do that, you need to understand exactly who you are and why you're doing this, because ultimately that's what's going to resonate. You think why people engage with brands, engage with artists, it's not a logical choice. People don't buy Coca-Cola products because they're healthy for you. They buy them because Coca-Cola, since the 70s, has done a wonderful job of selling happiness, and same thing with your favorite artist. One thing in the seminars, the workshops, that I always ask is, who's your favorite artist and why? What is it about them? And every single time, whoever's answering that question comes back with something more than, oh, I like this song, or I like how they sound. It's something that connects with them, whether that's a values-based thing, whether that's the way they go about their process. It's something unique to that artist that resonates with that person who is a part of their audience, right? And so by asking that question and getting that answer, we're able to then go to the creatives in the room and say, all right, so what does that mean for you? How are you thinking about these questions and answering these questions for yourself, so you know who your target is, so you know what you're aiming for, and also so you know who your audience isn't, because that's important too. Because I think there's so much noise out there, and so much, especially in this industry, that'll tell you who and what you need to be, what it needs to be, right? It needs to be this. Don't bore us, get to the chorus. That there's a lot of pressure around that. There's a lot of pressure and expectation around numbers, right? But the numbers don't matter, at least not as much, if you have that core group of people that keep coming back to you every time. That every time you drop merch, they're buying it. Every time you release a book, in my case, they're buying it. Every time you have a show, they're coming. You have new music out, they're streaming it. They're going on Bandcamp for Bandcamp Friday, whatever your mechanism of choice. They're buying your vinyls, right? Like, having those people that are in your corner no matter what, and that actively show up and participate, that means way more than having 100,000 followers on Instagram and only getting 30 likes on your post.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is too, here in the industry, like we can see through that now. You know, we're not as focused on big followings as maybe we once were, because you could buy that. You could pay for those followers. And it's pretty obvious when people do. It's obvious when you pay for streams. And Spotify is cracking down and has been for a couple of years on that anyway.
Right.
Your best approach, your most sustainable approach is to build an organic, authentic audience and have ways to continue tapping in with them, to continue communicating with them, and build a true community.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So what are your thoughts on, you know, we talk again in marketing about the whole peso model as far as a paid and earned and shared and owned media. So as an artist, what recommendations do you have, knowing that there's obviously importance for leveraging the main platforms that you have to be a part of? It's like you have to be at that show, you have to be on that platform, Spotify, Apple Music, etc. Very metrics driven though, obviously. But then on the other hand, there's something to be said for cultivating your owned media in terms of email lists. You know, what are your thoughts on you know, recommendations to artists that are starting to, you know, cultivate that foundation?
Yeah, I really think that's where things are headed, especially as social media becomes more ad driven. Of course, we don't know, at least here in the US, what's going to happen with TikTok. There's a lot of unpredictability and a lot of tricky waters. And I think, like, you know, I'm going to preface this by saying, like, there's value in all of it, right? Like, you need to have a presence on Instagram. You need to have a presence for as long as it exists anyway on TikTok. I think YouTube is a criminally underrated and underutilized platform by artists.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you know, when you establish consistency on YouTube rewards that better than some of the other platforms. You know, in terms of if you're posting shorts every day, your shorts are going to get a lot of views. Your channel's going to gain traction. YouTube does a great job of keeping your videos in the algorithm of people who have already viewed one, right? So you need all of these platforms. However, they don't tell the whole story. Spotify doesn't tell the whole story, you know. And I think another thing with Spotify, to kind of go on a tangent for a second, a lot of people, you know, lament the streaming payouts from Spotify, which are not good, right? Like, let's just be honest about that. But at the same time, we can't expect Spotify to change their tune anytime soon. We can lobby, we can petition, we can do all that, and maybe change will happen over time. But for now, let's look at Spotify for what it is. It's just another marketing tool. Right. It's just another place to have your music. Now, as far as like owning your audience, own media, I think that's becoming increasingly important. Can never go wrong building your mailing list, because that is a way to directly market to your audience, right? That's a way to engage them one-to-one. And a lot of folks are building communities, whether that's on Discord, whether that is on Patreon. There's this other app called Circle where you can build a community with different channels. You can have different on-demand resources, whether that, if you're an artist, like you can have your videos up there, you can have exclusive content, that kind of thing, where it gives people a chance to tap in and feel like they're a part of something. And the great thing is you can set up a subscription model that way too, to where you're getting some recurring revenue every month from your true fans who are there for a reason, who aren't just there because of a sound or a trend, but they're there because they're connected with you. They want to support you. They believe in your art, right?
Mm-hmm.
So by identifying that audience and identifying that from a place of your shared values, you're more likely to attract those people who would join a community like that, who would sign up for a mailing list, who would prefer that one-to-one interaction rather than just passive following on social media. And so there are a ton of platforms where you can build that kind of thing. You know, it's just a matter of what suits you the best, you know, whether that's Discord, whether that's setting up a paid community on something like Circle, whether that's a subscription service like a Patreon, right? But the options are there for you, and they're more abundant than ever. And then from there, it becomes a matter of how are you using these other channels to drive people to that community, right? Like there probably will have to be some ad spend on Instagram, on TikTok, on whatever platform you're using, right? YouTube even, to drive people to that community. to get eyeballs on it in the first place, right? But once they're there, how are you keeping them engaged? How are you providing them the value to convince them to stay and pay whatever the monthly is, right? Because that's the thing, is we are all, as consumers, looking for value in what we are investing in, right? We talk about the fair value exchange a lot in the workshops and seminars, right? Like, if you want somebody to make a purchase decision or even make a business decision, the value they're receiving in return has to match the value that you're expecting to receive from them, right?
Or exceed.
Yeah, or exceed, right? So like, how are you providing value to your audience in the way that you expect your audience and its different segments to provide value to you, right? Yeah, and that goes way beyond saying, hey, it would mean a lot to me if you listen to this song. Like, how many DMs have we all received saying that? Like, you got to give them more. You got to give them a reason. You know, that's harsh yet simple truth number 2 of every talk that I do is you must give people a reason to care.
I think a lot of that comes, sorry to cut you off, but I think that in part stems from knowing the foundation from which you're operating from, right? Because it would be very difficult to say I'm providing value without knowing yourself, without knowing yourself as an artist and the type of things that you want to bring across, and also who you're speaking to.
Yeah, absolutely. It all comes from knowing yourself, because if you don't know yourself, then how's anybody else going to know you? If you're not communicating yourself fully, authentically, how's anybody going to know who that authentic version of you is? And that's something, honestly, like I'll open up here and I'll tell you, like, I've struggled with that throughout this journey, like feeling comfortable just like owning all parts and just being me. You know, I think as a male entrepreneur in America, like, if you're too open, people kind of like side eye you. I've even had people tell me that people aren't going to take you seriously as an entrepreneur if you're open about certain things. You know, I've had people tell me, you know, because like I do share content that talks about like the ups and downs. You know, I've had people tell me, oh, well, you sound like you've been kicked. It's like, well, yeah, but you know, I get kicked in the face and I get back up, you know. And I think when you don't lean into the full breadth of your journey, you know, you're leaving parts out and you're leaving opportunities on the table for people to connect, you know. And so like for me, even like I've had to get comfortable leaning into that and not shying away. And a lot of that comes from the judgment and insecurities of others, these external factors coming in and telling me, oh, you shouldn't say that, because they struggle to do that themselves. Right. And so like as an artist, like, don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid to lean into what makes you you, whether good, bad, or indifferent, right? Like, it's all part of your story. It all informs your art, and it all gives depth to the experience that the listener, that the audience is going to have when they're engaging with you, because they know the place that it comes from at that point, right?
That's fascinating. It makes me think of another pitfall that artists might fall into, painting with a little bit of a broad brush here, but in some cases it might be something where the artist is thinking, I need to stay mysterious, I need to stay somewhat obscure, and I can't give away too many secrets about the creative process, and it really conflicts with the concept of always be generating content, right? And journaling, not promoting, right? Or I mean, I got that wrong, but you know, cataloging all of the experience that you're having, you know, like tape yourself going to, or record yourself going to shows, and record what's happening in the green room, and record what's happening on stage, and everything, catalog everything, you know, and make that available to your followership. But then where's the room for, you know, what's happening behind the curtain?
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, I think a lot of that comes out in the presentation of the art, right? I think there's a way to balance both. I really do. And I'm seeing artists really start to lean into that. Like, you take somebody like a Lady Gaga, for example, right? One of my favorite examples, because like everybody knows like to expect the unexpected from her from an artistic standpoint. You know, she's in a lot of senses, you know, in the way she chooses to present her art and reinvent, like it's Bowie-esque in that way. Now, David Bowie, you like, kept a lot of stuff under the vest in a personal sense. But like Gaga, you follow her on social media and like you'll see that conceptual, that artistic side of her, that part that's presented for the world through concept, right? But then you'll also see her share about causes that she's a part of, share about things that are happening within her sphere, right? You get these slices of life from her and these slices of who she is behind that curtain. But when it comes time for that curtain to come closed and for you to see, that persona, for you to see that concept, for you to kind of not have access to the fourth wall, like, then it's time for that. And you get to just strap in and enjoy the ride. We see that a lot in pro wrestling now too, right? Where it used to be a super, super protected business, right? Where like you never rode with your opponent. You were never seen in public with your opponent. Now, because of social media, like everybody sees what's happening behind the scenes, right? But when you get to the presentation of WWE television and the premium live events, right? Like you are invested in the story that's taking place before you, right? It's all entertainment, right? And it doesn't mean it can't move you. It doesn't mean that it can't affect you emotionally, stir something up. But we also are able to separate that from reality, right? We're able to immerse ourselves in this story and let it move us, let it teach us something. But then when it comes time to engage with real life, we engage with real life. And now we have more people that we can share that with, including the people that we get to see playing these stories out.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, again, it's a push-pull, right? Because I think a lot of artists maybe overthink that they have to be interesting or on all of the time. And the reality of the creative process is that there's segments of time where you're really concentrating on getting a chorus right, and it's just not entertaining, or maybe that's a poor example, but life happens in between, and artists sometimes get caught up on, I know I do, on okay, what actually makes entertainment? What should I be putting front side? And then what is passable as does it make sense for this to become content, or can this just be something that stays behind the curtain?
Right. And I think like there's something to be said for not airing everything out, right? Like obviously, there's a certain sense of like privacy and separation that we need to have a healthy relationship with what we create, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think too, like I find that a lot of folks will, and I've been guilty of this myself, like I said, will hold certain things back, even if it's important context, because of fear, right? Because of fear of judgment, because of fear of being looked at a different way, right? Because of fear of not being taken seriously as an artist. The truth is, if you're making great art, people are going to know you're making great art. And if you're able to relate to them on a human level and share that with them, even better, because then they're going to care about it more, right? So it's finding that balance, right? It's finding that balance between the art, the platform, the creation of it, and how people engage with that, but also the values behind that creation and the deeper level with which people connect with it. Mm-hmm. You need both. You need both. And I think part of that comes with conquering your fear, right? Of being perceived a certain way, being judged for having these moments that lead to the creation of this great art, while also making sure you're leaving enough of yourself for yourself and for your private life and for your personal life. We've seen that run off the rail in celebrity culture a lot, where everybody's, people's lives are on full display for everybody, right? And that isn't healthy either. So it's finding that balance of like, hey, I'm a real human being, and this is my real human experience, and forming this thing that you're going to love, while also having enough reservation to understand what needs to be left on the cutting room floor. Right.
Yeah, that's fascinating stuff. So back to UMC a little bit there. You have a book coming out. You've been doing the brand camp sessions. You're also doing one-on-one mentorship. Is that right?
Yeah. So, and there's a one-on-one component to brand camp as well, but just in general, one-on-one is on a rolling basis anytime and covers a lot of the things we talked about here today, as far as helping you really drill down who and what you are as an artist and how it's going to translate into what you do and the audience, the opportunities you attract, right? And from there, we're looking to expand our offerings. I mentioned that we're in the process of building and rolling out our new and improved Underdogs membership community. And part of the plan there, and we're already gathering those resources and starting to load them up, is having a lot of on-demand learning from other experts in other fields, right? Because I might be able to help you with your big picture concept. I can't tell you how to write a hit song. I'm not a producer, but I know people who are. I know people who can come into this ecosystem and share what they know, right? And so we're going to have a lot of that available to you as well in the community. But yeah, the UMC Academy, as it stands right now, there's one-on-one coaching. Of course, there's the brand camp program, which again, 6-week program that really takes you through those fundamental, foundational aspects of who am I, what is my brand, and how does that translate out into the world. We're in open enrollment for that now. The next brand camp period starts on March 24th, goes for 6 weeks. And yeah, the book, 60 plus lessons from the creative journey, out now. I'm also going to be at South by Southwest doing building your authentic artist brand workshop, as well as mentor sessions. The book will be available there in the bookstore. So a lot happening in the UMC Academy part of Underground Music Collective. And of course, we still got the blog. We still got the Quinn Spin podcast. Those things are kind of not getting the love I want to give them right now because I'm so focused on education, but keep submitting your music. And, I'm always checking the forums and seeing what we can get up on the blog. So, yeah, there's a lot going on. There's a lot happening. And in the meantime, I'm also building a team because one thing I've definitely learned is you can't do it all yourself. So
that is very important lesson. So on that note, I mean, you have several irons in the fire right now. What's that kind of 1 year, 3 year projection looking like for UMC at the moment?
We're really excited about the community we're building, both digital, the one that I mentioned, like the actual, like the thing that you can go and join, the Underdogs community, as well as just the community that we're building in different markets and across different markets. Like I said last year, had a chance to go to a few different markets, had a chance to come up there, of course, for the first time, go down to New Orleans, back home to Bethlehem, had a chance to go to Atlanta for Forbes BLK, which was really cool. Met a lot of really great connections there. Going to South by Southwest. And again, we're all having these similar conversations, right? About how to give creators the power back in this industry. Because without the creators, there would be no industry. There'd be no reason for an industry, right? So how do we make this a more fair and equitable, more sustainable endeavor for those of us who are on the ground floor creating, right? And so the 1 to 3 year projection is an interconnected community of more creatives, of more professionals who are able to help each other grow and learn and succeed and uncover new things, regardless of location. We're based here in Nashville, right? But the reason when I moved to Nashville, I didn't rebrand into something Nashville oriented is because I always wanted to branch it out. Right. I always saw Nashville as the jumping off point for something bigger. That's why I didn't go from Lehigh Valley Underground to Nashville Underground. Plus Nashville Underground's a bar and I probably would have gotten sued. So those Broadway bars, those honky tonks have a lot of money. I'm not stepping to them. But the projection is to continue to grow that community, continue to bring people into our ecosystem, continue to contribute from that ecosystem to other ecosystems, right? Yeah. Continue to provide more opportunities, not just for artists, but for the creatives that serve them and to connect the dots. So let's say somebody from Nashville comes up to Gussapalooza and they need video. We could hook them up with MTAV. We could hook them up with Undiscovered. Like we already know people up there that we can connect them with. So now it's like, how do we get all these people talking to each other on a regular basis? And so that's really the challenge. And I think that's really going to ensure the growth of not only our platform, but a lot of other platforms, right? Is we need this centralized hub that can branch out, right, to all these different locales and build these pipelines and build these bridges and connect people that otherwise wouldn't have been connected otherwise. And so I said otherwise twice there. I just realized that, but English major thing. Sorry. But yeah, I mean, it's all about that interconnectivity. It's all about the community that we're building and how we are equipped to not only serve in the present moment, but learn from each other so we can build a better, more robust ecosystem that's going to do more good and create that equitable industry.
Yeah, I think the work that you're doing is really important because a lot of this is around. I mean, there's tons of information out there on the web. There's no question. You could be going down several rabbit holes, spend weeks and weeks learning about how to perfect your craft, etc. But I think there's so much importance in meeting people who have been through similar experiences and are real about this is hard work. It's going to take a lot of time and energy and effort and money. And I mean, that's just the reality. So even just having the opportunity to commiserate or connect with people who are of similar mind, I think that's extremely important, regardless of genre. Because like you say, these conversations are happening all over the place. It's not just contained to one specific geography. One question I had was, in your experience, are you seeing that there's any logical transition from when an artist or a band goes from that point of I'm working 3 jobs and I'm doing this on the side to I'm starting to gain an understanding of how to monetize appropriately so that I could start to focus on this full time? Because you went through that transition yourself. Is that something where there's a definitive point where you can say, okay, this artist is ready to start taking this full time, or is it a lot more nuanced than that?
I think it's a lot more nuanced, and I think it's definitely not linear. Like even for me, it hasn't been linear, right? Like this is, in the macro sense, attempt number 3 at going full time, right? Because there was right after IBM at the end of 2013. There was in 2017 until I moved here, right? And then I got a desk job for a couple of years, and then I finally took the leap at the start of 2021. And even then, like, you're going to pick up odd jobs and odd gigs, and like you're going to maybe flirt with the idea of going back to corporate America.
Right.
And one of the lessons in the book is that it's okay to have another job while you're building. I used to have this big chip on my shoulder of I'm not a real entrepreneur if I'm not doing that 16 hours a day. And like, okay, there's something like noble in that, right? There's something like, of course you want to like dive into your passions and wake up doing what you want to do, but you also have to do things like eat and have a place to live and not get your car repossessed. And if you have pets, you have to keep them alive. If you have kids, you have to keep them alive, right? So
I hear you have to feed kids every day.
Yeah, every day. And like I have a cat, and cats are pretty resourceful, but still I like to have food for my lucky duck, like his name's Lucky. I call him Lucky Duck.
Right on.
But like you have to make sure your needs are met so you can show up for the thing.
Yeah.
This idea of, oh, well, normal jobs are for normal people, like get bent. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's fine to work a job. It's fine. And one day the goal is for all of us that we're not going to need to.
Well,
right?
Yeah, I think the important thing is to ensure that you keep sight of the North Star, right? That there's always that the goal in mind, you're headed towards that. And ideally you are in a close-knit community, that all have similar thoughts, but also if you're in a situation where you're either in a band or you're in a partnership or whatever that is, you don't have to have 100% of the same sentiments, but I think it might be healthy to have conversations about, okay, so are we on the same page with what we're trying to achieve here? Mm-hmm. What does success look like to you? And ensure that everybody is of similar mind, because maybe you can speak to that a little bit as to, are there situations where artists, a band, may have differing opinions of their interpretation of success?
Oh, all the time, because, I've been seeing it this entire time, bands that I've just encountered over the years where like you have one member who's really gung-ho and is like doing all the work, and the others are just kind of fine playing the local gigs and the farmers markets and like not really going beyond that. Whereas, somebody else in the band has designs on this being the big thing that they do with their lives, right? And like, I think it all comes back to that values conversation, right? Is like, what are your shared values? And are you all rowing in the same direction? That's very important, is to align with people in the collaborative sense that are all rowing in the same direction, that want similar things as you, and that are willing to contribute something to the greater vision of this, right? And I think as we get a little further into adulthood, it's harder to find those people, certainly in a band dynamic, like I think when you're in your teens and early 20s, it's a lot easier, but like once the pressures of life start imposing their will on people, like that's where you start to see this divergence, right? So I think it's all about having those conversations up front, like, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Is this what you're looking for? And just being transparent and honest about that. And if it's a fit, great. If it's not a fit, okay. And if it starts as a fit and becomes not a fit, then you have to have that honest conversation as well.
Yeah.
Our paths will diverge and they'll come back together. Very few relationships in this business and just in life in general, I find, end and then have no chance of being revisited, right? Yeah. Like we ebb and flow and we change, and like maybe it's not a fit right now. Maybe a couple of years from now it will be. And that could be in a professional relationship, that could be in a personal relationship, but communication is the key. What do we want out of this? Do we want the same things, and are we moving in the same direction? And one more note too that I thought of on the making sure you have an income thing, right? Because I thought of one of our artists here, hip hop artist, brilliant artist by the name of Foundation Mecca. Like he and I talk about this all the time. He's a good friend, and I work with him at Lord Goldie on the Healers Project, which is a heel hop project. We've actually got an event tonight as a recording that we're doing. But he and I talk about this all the time. It's like, it's not just I have to go to this job. It's like it's an investor. Right? Like I found an investor. I just have to go do some work for them, and then I get the money to funnel back into my thing.
Oh, I like that.
Because that's the thing too. In addition to like making sure you stay alive, you also need some funds to invest in your platform, right? And if your platform's not generating those funds, you have to get them from somewhere. Like none of us want to work a job we don't like, right? But at the same time, there are jobs you can find that you're not going to hate too much and that are going to help feed the beast so you can build the thing properly and get to a point where it's what you wake up and do every day.
Yeah, I really like that. I think, there's also something to be said for alleviating the stress of having to feed your cat or getting your car repoed. If those things are not so top of mind, it can, in some cases, lend to better creativity. I mean, just the reality of, you can't necessarily always function at top peak creativity if you're worried about losing your house.
Right. Like the more chaos that's in your life, and this is just a general sentiment across the board, the more chaotic your life is, the less creative you're going to be. Right. And so like, that's something that in a general sense, not just a financial sense, I've gotten a lot more in tune with, especially over the past couple months, is like, if it's bringing some kind of chaos or unrest, like I'm going to set some pretty firm boundaries around it.
Yeah.
I'm going to limit my exposure to that thing or that person, because if it's not adding, it's taking away, and that said, with respect, I mean, again, people are on different journeys and that kind of thing. But at the same time, like it comes back to that concept of rowing in the same direction, right? If I'm rowing in this direction, and I've got an anchor holding my kayak back from getting anywhere, like, then I'm not going to move forward. I'm not going to move in the direction I'm trying to go. I'm going to get held back from it. And so sometimes you just got to release those anchors, right? Because otherwise that's what's going to stop you from reaching your potential.
Right.
So anything that's pulling you back, anything that's holding you back, anything that's bringing an element of chaos in your life, that's taking your focus away from the thing that you're trying to do, if it's not adding, it's taking away. And that's something that I've really had to learn. And that's something that I've really had to set boundaries about. And I've had to set boundaries with people I care about, like recently, over this, because it just wasn't a line. We see it, there's this line the song All of Me, Logic and Roses featured on this big gigantic track. And Logic says, we see eye to eye, but you ain't in my vision. Like, we might have similar ideas, we might have similar viewpoints on things, but right now, you know, I'm going in this direction, you're going in that direction. So if we're rowing in different directions, neither one of us is getting anywhere, right? And so you have to protect that energy. You have to protect that time, and you have to protect your own boundaries in a way that's going to keep you focused on what you're trying to do here.
Yeah. Great. Well said. Agreed. So real quick, what's on your bookshelf, right? Or your nightstand, right? What are you reading right now to inspire?
What am I reading right now? I really like what John Kim's doing. I mean, it's more in the relationship end right now, but, you know, that's an area of my life that I'm also trying to invest some time into, you know, and he's got some really great practical books. I don't know if I can curse on the show, but his one book is called I Used to Be a Miserable F. And it's all about like how to step into a more secure place of masculinity, you know, and not the quote unquote toxic kind, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, he also just released a new book called Break Up on Purpose that I'm curious to read, which is a follow-up or a spiritual successor to his book Single on Purpose, which is all about, you know, like coming back to yourself, right? And coming back to your energy. So again, you can define your life on your terms, you know, and I think there's a lot to be said, you know, for that concept and how it relates to everything we've talked about here today, right? Because it's not just, you can't compartmentalize something like creativity and art and separate it entirely from your life, because your life is what informs it, right? And so the way you show up for one is the way you're going to show up for everything, right? The way you're showing up for your life, the way you're showing up for yourself and honoring yourself is going to inform your creative process, is going to inform your creative output. It's going to inform the message and the gifts that you have to share with the world, right? And so it's important to check in and remember who you are and why you do what you do, so you can create from that place, so you can operate from that place, so you can engage with the world from that place. So yeah, John Kim's works have been really helpful toward me. Truthfully, right now, I don't have a ton of time to read. I wish I did. You know, I wish I had more, you know, but, you know, gearing up, you know, I'm on the road to South by Southwest, you know, that's the hashtag I've been throwing out there anyway. And just really, you know, trying to nail this stuff, you know, and trying to, you know, we've got another workshop coming up here in town on the 27th, you know, which is a warm up for me to go to South by, doing a book release event here in Nashville that same night at that event, at that workshop. You know, so it's kind of tough for me to really find the time to sit back and, you know, dig into something. But when I have the chance, you know, it usually tends to be more in the personal development realm, like the works I mentioned, you know, because I find that informs my process more than anything.
Yeah. Great. Amazing. All right. Well, Gerard, thank you so much for taking some time this morning to talk through some of your journey. And also I want to follow up to maybe in a couple of months and see how things are going, and you know, just touch base. So if anybody is just curious, as you know, happens upon the podcast and is interested in reaching out, what's the best route? How should they get started in your community?
Well, umcnashville.com is our central hub for all things independent music, creativity, community, and more. You'll be able to find your way from there. Our Instagram just got zucked at 5,000 followers. So our new Instagram is UMC Worldwide. I think we're about at like 220 some followers as of recording right now. So help us get that back up to 5K. You can also follow me at Gerard Longo 12, Gerard Longo 12. That's my personal Instagram, and the Quinn Spin, 2 N's and Quinn, 2 N's and Spin, Quinn Spin official on IG, as well as on your streaming platform of choice. Yeah, I've got more episodes of the Quinn Spin in the can right now. You know, the focus again is just on getting ready for South by, getting ready for the book release, that kind of thing. So unfortunately, I'm a little delayed in getting some of those episodes out. But keep an eye out this winter and spring, you know, going forward, because we've got a lot cooking, got a lot more in the can, and those are the best ways you can tap in and follow along. And The book is on Amazon as well as Ingram Spark. And if you go to my Instagram, you can find those links to get either a digital or a paperback copy. So,
I hear in advance of the writer.
Yeah. Apparently, like if you pre-order now, you're going to get it before me. So, go for it. I got a photo of it last night of the inside cover because I guess my friend was expecting an autograph and she's like, something's missing. I'm like, wait a second, where did you even get that? Because it's not supposed to be out for another 2 weeks. I'm like, where did you get a bootleg copy of my book? But no, they just started sending the pre-orders out. So cool.
Yeah, no, that's great.
I'm down for it.
Yeah, and congratulations, by the way. That's no small feat there for sure, getting published and pushing that out. So amazing. Well, thank you again, Gerard. It's wonderful to catch up with you again. And we're excited to get this out. And as I say, I'll be following up in a while and just see how things are going, and also become a member of the community and keep pushing the good word to artists.
Thanks so much, Kevin. I appreciate you having me on, and looking forward to staying connected here, and definitely looking forward to Gussa this year too.
Likewise. Yeah, it's going to be a blast this year for sure. All right, man. Well, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks so much.
And the page writes